I should be building a cat monorail subway. You make the rail out of wood and use these dolly casters as the wheels. Imagine digging out a trench beneath the dog pen, then putting a rail into the trench and upside down U-shaped tunnel pieces, and then burying them over. The cat can then be placed on a monorail trolley and pulled by a rope through the tunnel that will be half a foot underneath the dog pen. The cat hates the dog. The dog makes him agitated. He hisses at the dog. But will the cat sense the dog if he is passing through a tunnel underground beneath it? The monorail cart would have a long string attached to it, to both of its ends, and the string would stretch to the ends of the tunnel. It would be the only way to pull the dolly through the tunnel with the cat riding inside, because the tunnel would be way too small for a person to get in there and push the cart. The tunnel would not be straight either. It would have several curves just to make things fun. Based on this picture, the string would rub against the curved walls of the tunnel as it pulls the dolly. Will the cat be in danger if a rattlesnake takes refuge in the tunnel? The cart will have to be built with some kind of mesh over the windows, so the cat is sealed inside and the snake can't get at him. If the cart gets stuck or derails, the cat will be trapped in the middle of a 20-foot long tunnel that is too small for a human to fit inside to reach the cat. At that point, the only way to get him out will be to dig up the tunnel and crack it open, and that could take half an hour. Building a monorail for a cat is easier because it is much smaller than for a dog. A tunnel is easier to dig for a cat than for a dog this size. The floor of a cat tunnel can be only 2 feet down, but for a dog it would have to be 6 or 7 feet down. There could be a circular tunnel dug where only one small part of it emerges on the surface to load the cat and unload the cat from the train. It will have to be serpentine and not a perfect circle, because I'm obsessive compulsive and I don't want my train experiencing a continuous turn only in one direction, with the turn holding to a constant radius. The monorail cart will be propelled with a rope, and because the track is a circle, the rope can be tied off to both ends of the cart. Then the cart can be moved back and forth by the rope, and it will function like a clothesline strung between two pulleys. But how do you pull the rope all the way through the tunnel initially from one end of the tunnel to the other, with one end of the rope tied off to the cart at the end of the tunnel and the other end of the rope sticking out of the other end of the tunnel? How do you fish the rope through the tunnel? The tunnel is too narrow for a person to crawl through, and because of the curves and changes of elevation, you can't just push the rope through with a pole or something. Well, there is two ways. You can lay the rope in the tunnel as you are building it segment by segment. Or better yet, you build the whole tunnel, then you stick a cat in there, tie the rope to the cat, and then block off the exit. Then, in order for the cat to get out of the tunnel, it will be forced to walk through the entire tunnel to the other side, dragging the rope behind it, and therefore stretching the rope through the tunnel so it can be tied off to the monorail cart. Well, instead of a monorail subway, the cat gets this stroller to ride in, which isn't as fun. And what sucks is there's no room to create a long track for the stroller where I live. It's not like I have a street with a sidewalk available, because if I did, the cat would be riding as far as a mile away from home. Instead, this track takes about a minute to walk. Because There's no room for the stroller to turn around at the end of the track. I just push it in reverse, and I devised push handles at the front so I can push it in reverse. It's like the cat is being forced to ride a fucking bus that loops around town. It's a daily ritual with 5 to 10 loops being made around the track. It's a ritual that makes no sense. Put the cat in a stroller, trap him in it, and then roll him around on a path so it's always the same predetermined route, and the cat just has to sit there and go around back and forth. What will I do if a wheel breaks on this stroller? I would need to build some kind of dolly then so I can keep the ritual going. Imagine how fucking embarrassed you would be walking around the neighborhood pushing something like this. This is something a vagrant would push around, and a fucking cat is trapped inside it and forced to ride. Instead of underground, a cat monorail could also be built elevated about 4 feet above the bottom of the dog pen, inside the dog pen. That way, it will tease the dog to have the cat riding so close above him, and the cat will be agitated and hissing at the dog, even though the dog cannot get at him inside the monorail tram. If I owned a house, what I would do is I would put down a cat monorail rail that would be several inches high and have it wind over the floor of the house. Anyone walking through the house would have to take care not to trip over it, because it would be like a wooden curb that's just sitting on the floor in the way of everything. Another challenge I'm considering is building an articulated monorail tram dolly. Not that it's necessary, but it would be better for the cat because he can have a longer cage to ride in, so to speak. Because it would be a cage, technically. The 2 sections of the tram have to bend, not just left and right, but up and down as well, with the cat being able to freely pass between them. So, what if I built an articulated dolly that's like an articulated bus? It would require having 6 casters instead of just 4, but the challenge becomes making a joint between them that's safe for the cat to sit on or walk over, but at the same time it has to be able to flex as the dolly rolls over uneven ground or the ground rises and drops. It has to be so the cat's paws or anything can't get caught in the joint and get crushed. I had to consider also the challenge of making curved monorail rails. How to make the sides of the rail curved. I would have to use 1/4-inch thick pieces of plywood as the side walls, because that plywood can bend, it's thin enough to bend. Or I could do this, I could just cut out very carefully with a jigsaw several curved pieces of regular plywood and just stack them. They would have to be identical pieces. Then there's no need for thin, flexible wood to form the side walls of the rails. Another thing is, what about creating a simulated subway tunnel for the monorail track? A simulated subway tunnel is not underground, but is built above ground. It creates the illusion of being in a tunnel without it actually being an underground tunnel. Basically, the rail is built above ground on stilts, and then the walls of the tunnel are built around it, without a roof, or a roof that has a gap in it, so that way my hand can reach in and move the trolley. The tunnel would be missing a roof, or it would have to have a roof, but the roof would have a gap 2 inches wide, and the trolley would have a handle on top that sticks up through the gap, so I can grab the handle and move the trolley. The reason for making a monorail train for the cat is simple. A two-rail railroad is just too hard to make, because how the hell do you make the wheels? But for a monorail dolly, you can buy regular dolly casters. The monorail track is so simple, it can be nailed together out of any kind of scrap woodworking shop wood. Problem is, I can't get at the tools to build this thing. I also figured out how to get a monorail train to run on regular streets and street traffic. It would require doing this. 2 trenches would have to be dug out to form the track. There would have to be some sort of gaps for the frames that hold the side wheels to fit into. These gaps have to be narrow so the wheel of a car does not get stuck there. A human foot can still get trapped. Also, what if an animal like a cat goes into one of those trenches as a monorail train comes through? All kinds of things would get lost in there. People might drop stuff into these trenches and then can't reach the stuff to get it out. Debris and trash would blow in there. But you'd be able to have a street-running monorail train.